Right, so what I've done, that bottom there, I've put on an angle. It's fairly tight to the ceiling that end and in line with the cornice I've already run. But I've packed it down at this end for the simple reason the end of the cornice here shot up. It's been damaged. So that was shot up, that was sort of running out and twisted. So to try and make it look visually better, I've basically, well, I've put some glue onto this, some PVA onto this existing cornice, and then I've run over the top of it. And because it's wedged on the bottom, it's made that cornice now come down from what it was. So all I've got to do now is just shape these, build them up, shape them, a couple of little bits touch up at that end, trim up the bottom there, and that's the cornice around the bay completed. Then we can get on some easier work, like get some float coats onto these sections, and then get some putty finish onto it to finish the bay. Right, what we have here is a dustbin, a metal dustbin, and it's full of what is going to be lime mortar for floating some walls. As you can see, quite a beast of a paddle on that. You've got to be very careful with this one, but I do have a slow start button on this, so just keep working our way down with the paddle. Chuck a bit of that in there. Now this, when I initially put the material into this dustbin, it was about halfway up. And of course now it's nearly at the top. And the reason for that is because when you add water to your lime, your kibble or your powdered quake lime, it doubles in volume. So basically you get double the amount. So if I was to have put the sand to the top of this bin, it'd be up here somewhere. So that's a no-no. So half a bin and your kibble. Right, okay. So we're going to start putting the float coat on top of the scratch coat now. Now I've absolutely saturated that, which is very important. You don't want any suction in here really. Well, you know, within reason. Because basically it will dry too quick, it'll shrink, it'll crack. And you don't want it to crack on this coat. Scratch coat, fine, if it cracks, it doesn't matter. It used to be known as the cracking coat. The other thing to bear in mind is that, you know, if you're basically doing a float coat and you're using quite a bit of stuff, you can do it with a hand. Because you need somebody to load you, mix and load for you. I mean, I'm not too bad in here because it's only small areas at the moment. But yeah, right, let's crack on. Now, some of you may recall back to this particular wall that we're now going to do. I put the laths on there. That was the first job. First job. We built a frame and then applied the laths. and that's what the scratch coat is sat on. Now this is solid. Okay, so of course you need your hawk, your mortar, and your lay-on trowel. I should turn the steps and work sideways so you can see what's going on. So nose of the trowel to get the top in there. Now this is, of course, for those who don't know, this is pure lime mortar. This has got no cement in it, no additives, nothing. This is just lime mortar, which is quick lime and sand with, as I've explained, an addition of animal hair. So we're going to the bead there, making sure that it's pushed in nice and tight to that bead. We want to make sure it's gone behind the bead where there's any hollers. That way it holds the bead tight, it stops it pushing in the future. Lovely sticky stuff, so you don't have to worry about putting on biggish lumps, which of course when you're floating a wool, that's what you want to be doing. You want to put on more than you need and then go over it with your feather edge and then your derby. Again, pushing it right up against that timber at the edge there to make sure that it's filled it and there's no hollers behind it. course, it's always good practice to keep your hook under where you're putting on. Because anything that you drop will go back onto your hook, so you're not wasting it and you're not making a mess on the floor. And as you can see there, we're not trying to straighten it at this stage. Just getting plenty on there. Down there. There you go, plenty on there now. The next job is to take some off. So we'll put down the old Hawk and laying on trap. We want one of these, which is a Derby. So obviously it's made of aluminium, lovely and straight, and we're going to run that up the plasterwork now. Now we've got on this side and on this side timbers which are set parallel with each other. So when I run up my straight edge, it will follow these timbers, and anything in between it will drag off, and that will give us a nice lovely straight flat wall. They're also plumb, so I'm not going to take it all off in one lump. We're going to take some off and go over it again. The reason I'm doing that is because if I try and take it in one lump, I'm going to end up with it all falling off the edge of the Derby and going all over the floor and wasting. If we go side to side like that, it's also very gently knitting it together. We're nearly at that point now where we're straight. Still quite a bit on there yet. So we're probably taking off half of what we've put on. Now we don't need to go that way because we know that the beads on either side are true. So we just need to go up and follow the beads. Right, that's pretty straight there now. In a while, probably a few hours yet, to be honest, we'll then go over it with the float, the wood float, just to rough it up a bit, and then we'll go over it with the old devil float with the the nails in it, just to put in all fine scratches to take the finishing coat. We'll also cut it back ever so slightly on the beads, about 2 mil. That's all we need on these, so that when we put the finishing plaster on, it's got a good thick coat of the putty finish next to the bead. Again, same routine, up to the top, up we go there. As you can see, it does take quite an amount off, which is what you're after. That's what you're aiming for. Onto there, like that. A little bit difference there. And of course, this method you'd use if you were doing a full wall. Only you won't have your beads to go to. You might have one on the corner, but you're not going to have your beads. So what you do, you run across it with one of these, which is a feather edge. So you go that way, and then I tend to turn it up the other way and go up. And I'll do that a couple of times to get it nice and flat. Any low spots, fill out, go over it again, etc, etc. And then once I've done all that, I'll go over it with the old Derby just to get it extra straight. And of course, then leave it, double flow, etc, etc. Now this is exactly how it had been done when the property was initially built. Now the reason I went across there was because we have quite a lump there which I can't get up far enough to take it off because I've been running into the cornice, which I don't want to do. So we'll just tidy that up there with the trowel a little bit. But we'll give it 5 or 10 minutes just to pull in slightly before we do that. Meantime, we'll get the bottom on. Now what I've also done, on the edge of the skirting board, the top edge of the skirting board, I removed all of the paint back to timber and went over it with a sander. Got it lovely and straight and flat again. Because we're going to work down to that. When we put our finishing coats on and we've gone across it with our tooling brush, it just leaves that lovely, clean, crisp edge. Instead of it being full of years of gloss paint and cork and filler, etc. Again, I'll try and get it so you can see. I need to be slightly more precise at the bottom here because it's going to be difficult to get in with the straight edge, so we don't want to be overfilling it too much. Again, making sure that it's pushed into the bead and into the edge of the skirting. No hollers behind it. Right, we now very carefully, with our Derby, remove the excess. Now you'll notice on the Derby, you've got like an L-shaped edge, and then just a flat edge. Now, when I'm going to things like skirting boards, for into a corner, I tend to use that edge. If I'm going upwards, I've just done, I'll use that edge. And use the trowel just to take that little ridge off there. Now bear in mind, this is your float coat. This is by no means the finish. It's got to have the finishing coat on top of this, which is the one that you're going to get lovely and flat because you've spent your time getting your float coat lovely and flat. So I'm going to use the trowel like a straight edge, following the side of the sill and the back edge of the skirt in there, which is a little bit more accurate than using the Derby down there. Into the corner, rolling up there, just to square up my corner nicely. I'll check the corners in a while once it's got a bit of a set on with the old set square, just to make sure that they are perfectly square with each other. They should be. Like I said, we'll leave that now for a good couple of hours just to get a bit of a set on. And when I say a set on, I don't mean go hard. I mean it's gone stiffish. And then we go over it with one of these, which is a wooden float. Okay. So that's not one I've made, by the way. That's a purchased one. That's made by Marshalltowns. So it is a good proper trowel. I don't know what timber is. It's something nice though. Right. So that's that now done and ready to be left for a while. So next we're going to get behind me here, which is the little dwarf wall under the window. So the first bit is to saturate the old wall. Apologies if the light keeps fading in and out. It's because basically we're in this bay window and yeah, it's cameras, isn't it? So best way is a flat brush, bucket of water, literally just keep doing that. Now I could use a pressure bottle and spray it, which I do have, or I could have brought the hose through and put it on a fine spray. But we don't really need to with this because it's only small areas again. When we're doing the bigger walls, we'll probably do that with the old hose and put it on fine spray. You know, this is an empty building, there's no carpets down or anything like that, so we're fine. Right, so we've now saturated it. And the next job, obviously, is start putting the float coat on. Now, if the camera picks that up there, that lump of white, well, that will have been a piece of the kibble that hadn't slaked when we made this mortar. But because this was put on 3-4 weeks ago, so that has now slaked because of moisture in the air, etc. Now, if that had been in the float coat and it slaked like that, it would have pushed the finishing plaster off, and we'll be going back to patch it in. So it's very important to make sure that your float coat, when you've done your slaking are slaked fully and correctly. By the looks of it, this particular mortar has, but it has been left for, well, 12, 13 hours, something like that. So it's had plenty of time to slake. I mean, you can mix your mortars, you can pre-mix it and you could leave it for months, as long as it's sealed from the air. And then you'd come and use it, and you'd know that that's really well slaked because it has been left for a long, long time. Right, let's crack on with the wall. Right, for demonstration purposes, I'll start in the middle. You might be able to make out, I don't know if you can, the hair in there. Remember, when you're doing line on your floats, it's very, very important to put your animal fibre in. And your scratch coat, of course. But when you're doing your finishing coats, you don't need any. You don't put the animal hair in your finishing coats. And the reason for that is, for one, it doesn't really need it. And for two, when you're troweling up, you're going to end up bringing it forward. And your wall will look like it's got a beard. Look like it's got a goatee. With the goat hair. Excuse the pun. So of course the next question I can hear somebody thinking is, why is it pink? I thought lime plaster was white. Well, the reason this is pink is because the sand that I'm using is a red sand. You can't get a white or a yellow sand in this district. It's all this horrible red stuff. I have tried to get my local supplier to buy in some better stuff, but they're not interested. Now what we're doing here at the bottom, we're keeping the top line of that skirting board visible, because if I can see it, it means that I can get my straight edge onto it when I pull up. So I've gone literally from the bottom of the skirting board up. If I've got big wads on it and I can't see it, it's going to cause me a lot of pain messing about trying to get the bottom straight again. Very last bit in, just there. Again, making sure that it's pushed right in, there's not any hollers in the corner or on the top of that skirting board. Right, so the next beast that we need is the old feather edge. So we use the old feather edge, very carefully place it on the top of that skirting board and then tilt it on a slight angle. Very carefully, side to side, bringing it up nice and slowly. Now I can see we've got quite a dip here in the middle. So we'll just double sure that it's not that we've got too much build up on either side, which we haven't. So what we do now is we just put a bit in where we've got that slight dip. And then repeat the process. Up she comes like so. Right, we're just clean off the feather edge so we can get a better look at it. Up she comes, nice and slow, looking both sides and making sure that there's no gaps between the edge of the feather edge and the wall. Because any gaps means a dip. Well, there were no gaps there, so we're fine. So what I've got to do now, because obviously the feather edge isn't long enough, so I'm going to put it back on carefully, come up again, nice and slowly, checking for gaps, run over it again. Just one very, very shallow low spot there, so I'll just put a little bit in it. Oh, there you go. That's pretty much the float coat on that section now done. Again, we'll leave that for a few hours to pull in, and then we can go over it with the float. Right, well, that's pretty much the end of today. You can see there the float is all done now, and it's all been floated and scratched. Right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to give the wall a little bit of a squirt with a bit of the wet stuff. I mean, the plasterwork is still damp, but you're better off having sort of, well, very little suction in it when you're putting your finishing coat on. So the procedure for putting it on is kind of similar to using a modern day plaster. You know, you start at the top and you work your way across and all that sort of stuff. You can see how lovely and smooth it goes on there. And one of the beauties with the lime finish is, if you any little bits that you need to straighten up, it will build out. You know, you're not going to go silly building it out. You know, a couple of mil, you're fine. Anything over that, and you're going to end up with it blistering or blebbing, as we tend to call it in the job. Working to the bead, exactly the same as if you were using the old multi-finish, making sure your bead's filled out. There we go, a little bit more up there. Well, nice and slow for you so you can see what we're doing. We're not too worried about getting it super even at this stage. I mean, this is the first of two coats. which is again the same as if you were using a modern day plaster. Move you down a bit. Right, so you get the general gist of how you put your first coat on there. Like I said, it's pretty much the same as just normal everyday skimming. You've got to be careful with it though, because if you're using a gypsum plaster and you pull your trowel up, it'll spread fairly evenly. This stuff, because it has the fine sand in it, it can ridge up. So you've got to be slightly careful with it. Right, I'll carry on and then come back to you when we get on with the next part of the process. There's nothing hard and fast about putting the second coat on. You just need to kind of lay it in a bit, get it as flat as you can. So the next process is I'm going to give it a sponge. Now, you could use a sponge float. However, my fine sponge float is, it's seen better days. So we're going to use this just to give it a fine sponge, and then we'll start the troweling in process. Of course, an easy way to get some water onto it is a fine spray with the old hose pipe. Just a quick flick over, nothing too dramatic. Get some water onto it, nice and easily and quickly. And then we get our sponge and we go around in a circular motion, or at least where we can. And what that's doing now is any little hollers, etc., it's just filling them in. Now, it's essential you do this with your lime plaster. I know some of you lads out there that are plasterers and you're skimming, you're using the old sponge floats for your gypsum plaster, which isn't really necessary. I understand why you do it, but it's not necessary. Whereas with this, it is. Now, I'm putting no pressure on the sponge at all. Very lightly going over this. We'll just give it another little dash of water at the bottom there. You could, of course, flick it with your flat brush or use a pump bottle if so desired, but just a bit easier with the hose today. Because you're checking your work as you go. Looking for them hollers and little marks and blemishes, cat's faces, call it what you will. A little bit in the corner there. Right, so that's now the sponge over it. What we need next is the water bucket with some water in and our flat brush. Okay, we're about 10 minutes down the road now. We've got our flat brush with some water on. Down the corner there, just make sure it's neat. And across the top there, like so. Again, not too much of an angle. And just start bringing her in. Now this is the first pass, and then we leave it again for a little while. Bin day. And there you go, that's the bay now, completely finished. Well, barring the ceiling, that is. That's another chapter. So next week we're going back on the old trawl boat, and carrying on with the back elevation. So as usual, I hope you've enjoyed the video. A little bit longer than normal, this one, but I wanted to bring you a closure to the lime plastering this time. So as usual, if you've enjoyed, don't forget, hit the like button. Very, very, very important, that like button. We need to get loads and loads and loads of likes each week. It helps build the channel, so we can bring you more videos like this. And don't forget to subscribe if you've not already subscribed. And if you have subscribed, well, thank you so much. We're really, really building on the gang now. We've got quite a few subscribers, and it's nice to see. Right, we'll see you all next week for another episode of Buggering About with Old Buildings.